Shades of Humanity, a wonderful program that is on every single Friday night at 10:20 p.m. Eastern Time. Howie Comen is a private detective, private investigator extraordinaire. He's a commentator on Shades of Humanity. He is the host of that. And joining him tonight is Rocky D, Radio Free Rocky D at rockyd.com. It is a murder that has puzzled people for over 40 years. I believe it is an assassination attempt on Angel Payton-Harmon's father, attorney George Payton Jr. These two men will better educate me on that, as they are great lovers of Charleston, South Carolina, have a great more information to give than I possibly ever could. I want to start with you, Howie. George Payton Jr., what do we know about George?
Basically, George was a civil rights activist, very active in the community. In his time in the 60s and 70s, we were getting out of the racial situation. Equality was becoming more the norm here, but not everywhere. George was a political phenomenon for his time. He was in the law office of Richard Fields, who became a family court judge, a friend of mine, and went on to become a circuit court judge, I believe a federal judge. The post office is named after Judge Fields. George Payton was in the office on the phone, as you said, and this individual walked in, asked the secretary to see him, very calm, cool, collected. She said, sit down, he's on the phone, very nicely. He sat down, and he said, can I use the restroom? And he got up. The restroom was right by George's office. He went back there. She heard 2 shots. He walked out calmly, looked at her. She could see the gun. And then she said, what was that? Something along those lines. And he said, oh, nothing. And he looked at her, stopped, and then walked out into oblivion. Now, again, George Payton was ahead of his time. I actually met him one time, as I recall. There was a special election for the state senate. I was green, just out of college, political science degree. I was going to run for that office. But with him running and what I had heard about him, I decided not to. And as I recall, he thanked me for not causing a runoff at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that was my involvement with him. And his murder is always stuck in my claw. And it's a situation that Judge Fields and I, he's 98 now. I've spoken with him since then. I've spoken with him in the past week. And so we have the police file from Angel. Rocky and I have just discussed it a bit. Now, I need to sort of introduce Rocky. We haven't had an opportunity. Very quickly, Rocky was with WNBC in Chicago. I think that's the way they had said that we should do that, NBC.
Yeah, I was one of the peacocks out of the, there you go. Yeah.
And then he went on to L.A.
Which, by the way, is right down the street from where Jussie Smollett pulled his trick, by the way. That's why I know so much about that.
Right. And then he went on to L.A., then he came to Charleston. Mm-hmm. And then when you and I developed this idea, and we knew that we need to regionalize it, I turned to Rocky, who had retired and was doing a podcast, and said, you need to come into this. We can do a Southeastern broadcast so we can pay closer attention to cases like Angel's case. And that's pretty much, I'm the detective. This is something that Walter Cronkite and I developed in the early 80s. Cronkite told me, you can be the detective, the investigator, get yourself a journalist. I've got a journalist with you. I've got a journalist with him. And that's kind of how we work out. He and I are going to solve this case and many other cases in the Charleston area. We know Charleston. Most people know us. A lot of people don't like us, but that's fine. idea here at this point, I pretty well have a good idea, and so does the police, what happened here.
Rocky,
There's several things that Rocky and I don't want to get into right now because I want this handled the right way. Now, what I've done is I've looked over the file, I've drawn my own conclusions. I think we can move this thing forward. However, I've written Mayor Tecklenburg, and I've asked for a meeting for Rocky and I with Mayor Tecklenburg and with the old mayor, Joe Riley, who is a friend of mine. He just started his term as mayor when George Payton was killed. And so I want to get together with both of them. And through Mayor Tecklenburg, I want to go down through the new police chief, who I don't know, to his officers. And I want to have a meeting about this case. And then what I want to do is I don't want to run around the police. I want to run through the police with this. Rocky and I want to develop this with law enforcement.
Rocky, this case, to me, smells very Smollett-like. It sounds very, very fishy. Is there something tingling your spidey senses regarding this particular case?
Having been raised on the south side of Chicago, this is something that happened almost every day.
Yeah.
And back in the day, 1975, Angel's father was killed. They didn't have DNA. If you couldn't get witnesses together, if you couldn't get a lot of evidence and pack it all together and keep it, witnesses disappear over time. If the killer was 40 years old, he'd be 84 today. Okay, so he might not even be around. Like he's younger. This has all the earmarks of a paid hit. The guy knew where he was going, walked in the door. He knew exactly where the office was. He knew if he asked to go to the bathroom, he knew where it was. He knew what the inside of the building looked like. And when he walked out of the building and stopped and looked at the front desk lady, you know what he was thinking. Sure. Should I kill her too? Right. Yeah. So he decided he didn't need to because she looked a little bit too busy in her own self, I mean, she wouldn't recognize him maybe. Which means that he is not a well-known person because he would have been freaked out at that point. It also means that he was probably not even from the area. There's a possibility he was brought in to do this. Now, a guy like George Payton can ruffle some feathers. And we have lost some media people because they ruffle feathers, too. I've gotten death threats, but at this point, you can open old cases. That's why ID Network is so popular now. I can binge watch that all day. I mean, I really can. But to get a case solved from 1975 will be difficult. If they still have the physical evidence that they had then, some of the DNA still may be good. Yeah. We may find out that the person who did this is already gone or has already been in prison. That's more likely than anything else because this was a hit. He walked in. There was no argument that the lady said she heard. There was no noise whatsoever. He walked in, spotted his target, fired, wide 2 shots. One to knock him down, one to kill him. Sorry about that. That's how it works. Yeah. Okay? Double tap. Bang, bang, you're dead. And then he walks right out. He didn't stand there over the body to make sure he's breathing. He didn't stand there. He didn't steal anything. It wasn't a robbery. He walked right out. This was a hit. Now, the police know this too. But over the time, when you can't, in 1975, as it turns into 76, and 77, nobody comes out. You get no witnesses that will talk. People move in and out of the city. People move around.
There are people who would say, why is it that you and Rocky and Ken are giving this young lady such hopes? You know that there are over 300,000 unresolved homicides in America since 1965. It is very unlikely that this young woman would ever know who killed her father. Why are you bothering her, and why are you bothering the police on this issue? Why don't you just let this matter die?
Too many people need closure. Too many people, the police can do just so much. I've been doing this for over 45 years. I don't have 10,000 clients. we take a couple of cases at a time. That's what you and I are doing.
Mm-hmm.
You've only got 5 or 6 cases that we're going to be looking at. We're setting up regional apparatus with TV shows so that we can divide and conquer these cases. When I had the Billy Cribb murder that we did with the local CBS affiliate here, we interviewed the mother. Now, this was a case that he was murdered in 74. What happened was the mother was so thankful that somebody was trying something, as was Angel, from what she said. She needed help. It's a cold case. The police have a lot of other things. So that's kind of why we're doing this, because of your daughter and because of all the daughters and sons out there and mothers and fathers that are seeking answers. You know, I've associated with over 600 private detectives from all over the world. So we have an apparatus that could go into, you know, we could develop these things. Now, let me get into a little more. How much time do we have?
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Go into this case. You have to look at 1974, 75. When I was doing the Billy Cribb investigation, I was working with Sheriff Al Cannon, who was a young cop in 74, and with Mickey Watley, who became a police chief and a SLED agent, who was also a young guy in 74 when Billy Cribb was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of the task force to investigate his murder. Now, Charleston at that time from the 40s was a rip-roaring place here. Prostitution, drugs, anything you can imagine, gambling. I was in gambling houses on investigations myself. They would have a gate in the front. You'd have to get through the gate to get to the door. And they had bouncers out there. Well, they were following a lead to go to one of these joints, and Mickey Watley got a pair of wire cutters of a gambling house investigation. The police chief stopped the investigation. The next year was the Payton murder. We're dealing with organized crime throughout the area. They had something called the Dixie Mafia that stretched all the way down south all over the place. And there's no telling what the circumstances were, but there were police officers that were not kosher. I worked with Sheriff Woodbury in Dorchester County in the late 80s, early 90s on the missing bridge inspector investigation. And a bunch of these bad guys wanted to dope in St. George. They came and they threatened Woodbury, who became the sheriff. And it's in my book, Angels on the Bridge, the story. Mm-hmm. They threatened to kill his family if he didn't kowtow to them and let the drugs be dropped on this airfield. He told them to go to hell. He put a shotgun through one guy's window. And then they made him go to Atlanta, threatened to kill his stepdaughter. And they tried to bribe him there. And then again, he told them to go to hell and left. I mean, that's what the area that we were living in, but that was all over the place. Chicago, same thing for years. New York, you know, I mean, that's the way things are. And then Payton was involved. He's an attorney. He was involved in a lot of different deals. He was a political figure. He was probably one of the first black men to run for office in the predominantly white Democratic Charleston area, South Carolina area. So there are a lot of reasons why he was hit. But Rocky and I are going to find out, just like he said. We have some leads, but in order to get this thing to work, I have got to have this Charleston City Police Department to agree to move on this. And I'm hoping by Angel here, you, Rocky, and I, we can force the issue and make them understand that we're not playing, and neither is Angel. Angel needs closure, just like a lot of other people need closure. And
Rocky,
that's what Rocky, you and I are all about.
Exactly. Rocky, I have 2 questions for you real quick.
Okay.
First question is, what is the role of the media I mean, real journalists, not the stuff that we see on CNN. Real journalists. What is their role in terms of closing out old cases like this? And then secondly, you have a major event coming up in April. Can you tell everybody about that?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, media has changed. You know, radio and television isn't what it used to be. It's certainly not what it was in 1975 or even 5 years ago, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is so much information on the internet. Yes, you can get bogus information. You know, you can get stuff on information about Bigfoot and we've sightings and things like that. I get that, but you can also get real information on there. People will send you. It's like the anonymous thing. They'll just keep doing it. They'll send anything. Look at what's it? WikiLeaks. Oh yeah, he had to run to Europe to hide. Why? People were hiding stuff back in the day. Hide stuff in 1975 when Angel's dad was shot. This stuff did not exist. You either went to the major network or to the local radio stations that did some news sometimes, and that's all you had. Now everybody is out there. Local television stations are in a world of hurt economically, and they have to pay outsiders because that's where people go first. All of the people who were denied space and time on the regular networks, who never got in the door, now all of a sudden everybody's a reporter. One of the best things about the internet is that anyone can do a show. Yep. One of the worst things about the internet is anyone can do a show. So you got to pick and choose what you're doing. There's a lot of hogwash on there. But somebody out there on the internet is going to know somebody who's involved in the case of killing Payton. Someone's going to know. There's a lady on the desk. I haven't guessed that yet. Running the desk. I'd like to talk to her. There's no way she's going to forget that. That's something she's not going to forget. I'd like to know about where their stuff goes. And now we've gotten so strong on the internet that I built my own internet studio, and I just turned down a job at a radio station today. I don't want to move. I don't want to go there. I told them, you're getting killed by the internet. I can do what you do right here in my house. I can do it right here in the house. I don't have to go to the station anymore. So I built my own. We're doing an event with Stop Human Trafficking, is what we're trying to do. Erase human trafficking. You would never think it, but slavery still exists worldwide. It has. We think slavery ended after the war between the states because we live in the United States. We know our area. But slavery continued. Slavery continued up until the 1890s in countries just south of the United States.
Tell them about Africa.
Africa still sells slaves today. The Africans are still selling, basically, their own people or anybody they find in Central Africa. I got bounced off of Facebook for posting a picture of one of them. There's this little 5 or 7 year old kid, and he's being dragged out of a house and he's being sold into slavery by some other thugs. They call them the Black Marauders or something like that. And they were dragging him out. And Facebook told me it was obscene because the kid was naked. He was like 7 years old.
Exactly.
And the point was of putting the pictures, they don't even wait for the kid to put clothes on. They don't even take his stuff. All they want is him.
They do that right here on I-95. They're coming out of Mexico. They're grabbing little kids. They're grabbing 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 7-year-olds.
Oh yeah. And let me tell you, if you look at the globe and if you look where Africa is, okay, parts of Africa from Central South are close to Mexico. Right. They'll bring the kids into Central America, pick up Central Americans as they go along, come through Mexico, which has, as you've seen by President Trump, has done nothing to help us. They want to be building a wall. They don't want you to be building a wall. You know what I mean? They should be stopping the crime by doing that. But they don't. They don't help. They just shovel through. It's like Mexican government officials give out maps to illegal aliens of where to go through the areas. Oh, the wall's built here. Go around and over there. That's what they do. So they pick up people the way, and then the first two interstates they hit usually are Interstate 95, which goes all the way from the south of Florida, all the way up the East Coast, through South Carolina, and into New York State, all the way up, in fact, north of Maine. It goes all the way to Boston. It goes all the way up into Maine. The other one is Interstate 10, which goes from Jacksonville, Florida, all the way across to San Francisco, all the way to L.A. In fact, the famous thing to do I did it one time where to take a picture of one end of Interstate 10 and then on the other end the same day. Because you're flying with the sun, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So they do that. So and kids have disappeared at truck stop. You turn around and Billy's gone, and you can't find him because by the time he knows he's gone, miles away.
12, and then they go into a community.
Yeah.
Tell them about that.
They go in and they convince other kids to join. You know, you can be free, you can do what you want, all the candy, all the things. I mean, it's all vibes you've ever heard. Now, by the time these people are teenagers, and at the time, well, he's a governor now, McMaster. At the time, he was Attorney General. He brought in a young lady. She was maybe 19, and she had just gotten out of the business. I'm telling you, she was 40. She was so ragged out. Yeah, she was Caucasian. You know, I couldn't tell if her hair because she died it so many times. Who knows? She was thin. She had been on a lot of drugs. She had obviously been harmed, and she was recently out of the business. They're running these businesses, these flavor businesses, and they're masking it behind, a lot of times, they're masking it behind home repair and the home cleanup and like Molly Maid outfits and stuff like
You know, you're
that.
absolutely right, Rocky. You know, I saw a picture today of a young girl who was missing in Washington, D.C., and they told me that she was age 15 years old. She looked every bit the age of a 40-year-old woman. The human trafficking system is a real problem in America. It starts at the southern border, and it works its way around. But it's good to have YouTube working in Charleston, South Carolina on those particular issues, and I'm so glad that you all were able to appear tonight as a collective force. Ladies and gentlemen, Rocky D, you can get more information about Rocky D at rockyd.com, rockyd.com, ROCKYD.com. And of course, Howie Comen, you can find him at shadesofhumanity.tv, shadesofhumanity.tv. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with more of the best right after these messages.
That thing was freaking heavy. We've had the Tuft Needle mattress for 1 whole year. Now we've got a new player in town, the Nectar mattress. They sent this in for review, so let's check it out. Alright, the biggest thing I've learned about this is you gotta open it slow because there's layers to it. You don't want to mess it up. Take your time. The directions even say take your time. Alright, this is my first impressions here. As you can see, the Nectar logo in the front. It's a little bit fancier looking, softer material with a little blue outline. It has these little puffy squares. Very typical of a traditional mattress. It's very soft. You sink in a lot more. I don't know how many layers are in this, but it's definitely softer than a Tuft Needle. Alright, this is what you get with your Nectar mattress. You just get like a little brochure. It says the Forever Warranty. This is kind of what differentiates Nectar from other companies. They have a, like a lifetime warranty, and you can try the mattress for free for 365 days. If you don't like it, you can just return it. Most people only have like